I'm so stressed out. In just 4 words, that statement says a lot. Rough translation, I'm feeling anxious, frustrated, and overwhelmed, and I'm struggling to cope with my situation right now. Everyone's been there, of course, but some folks say this high stress state describes their normal everyday life. Research suggests this could cause physiological dysfunctions that lead to long-term problems. That's because both acute and chronic stress have been shown to increase stress biomarkers such as cortisol, and irregular cortisol levels have been linked to both depression and emotional exhaustion. So University of Montreal researchers were curious. Do very stressed out people exhibit high biomarkers of stress than those who are more zen? In other words, is their perceived stress driving physiological changes that impact how they feel and act and essentially making their situation worse? Their new study attempted to find out. My name is Jeremy Colon, and this is The Dark Side of Fitness, episode 26. Real quick, biomarkers from the National Cancer Institute. A biomarker is a biological molecule found in blood, other blood fluids, or tissues that is a sign of a normal or abnormal process or of a condition or disease. Cortisol is a major stress response and steroid hormone that regulates a wide range of vital body processes. Quick background. The scientists recruited 123 healthy volunteers who self-identified as either Zen or very stressed out. Zen, the researchers used this label because it's widely associated with a state of low stress. They say it represents a person with high control over emotions and thus low stress and anxiety. Then they gave them a battery of psychological and emotional assessments to determine if how they were feeling, low stress or high stress, manifested itself in their blood work. For example, these tests measured subjective ratings of perceived stress, depressive symptoms, anxiety, emotional regulation, resilience, and mind-wandering. Mind-wandering, a 5-item mind-wandering questionnaire, measured the frequency of deliberate, spontaneous mind-wandering. The researchers say that recent studies suggest that mind-wandering could represent a risk factor for depression. One assessment, the Tier Social Stress Test, TSST, involved a 10-minute anticipation period, followed by a 5-minute speech and a 5-minute mental arithmetic task in front of judges. The results. The two groups differed significantly on most of their psychological and emotional assessments, but the scientists found no difference in their biomarkers of stress. Besides cortisol, the researchers also measured alpha amylase. Alpha amylase is a salivary enzyme that initiates the digestion of starch in your mouth. It's also thought to be a strong indicator of psychosocial stress, like you might get from public speaking. For simplicity's sake, I'll only refer to the cortisol results in this review. However, the researchers didn't find any significant difference in alpha amylase levels between the groups at any time during the study. For example, the very stressed out group scored significantly higher on the tendency to ruminate over stressful events, their capacity to inhibit hostile behaviors, their capacity to control impulsivity. Overall, they exhibited more symptoms of depression and anxiety and had a lower ability to regulate emotions, says the researchers. The Zen group, on the other hand, scored higher for resilience, emotional stability, and positive mental health. Yet, when the researchers analyzed both groups' cortisol levels during the day, one way to measure if they're having a psychological stress response, the only difference they observed was higher cortisol levels in the high stress group 30 minutes after waking. The upshot, the very stressed out group was certainly feeling stress, but they weren't responding to it physiologically, at least not in terms of the biomarkers the researchers measured. Important note, the researchers say it's possible other biomarkers would have shown an impact. What's more, during that TSST, the test where they had to make a speech, the very stressed out group did indeed report significantly higher levels of subjective stress compared to the Zen group. You might expect that from folks who describe themselves as high stress. But while both groups saw their levels of cortisol spike, indicating a physiological reaction to stress, their response was similar. So one group felt more stress, but they responded the same physiologically as those who were calmer. According to the researchers, these findings suggest that when people complain of being stressed out, what they may really be alluding to is an experience of psychological distress that is related to poor emotion regulation capacities. If they're right, this could be really good news. It means that for many high-stress people, that's not an underlying physiological problem that needs to be dealt with. Instead, you can work on improving emotional regulation skills, which can help you better cope with daily stressors and move closer toward Zen. A detail you don't want to miss. As noted earlier, the one difference in cortisol levels occurred 30 minutes after waking. The researchers suggest this might be because the very stressed out group wakes with a feeling of mental overload that may create a negative appraisal of the day, which could then impact cortisol secretion. Here are some coaching takeaways from this study. Number 1, learning to manage stress is important. Yeah, that's an obvious statement, but I want to underscore it here. Here's why. The researchers acknowledge that despite their findings, it could still be that persistent feelings of stress due to difficulties in regulating negative emotions might eventually lead to physiological problems. It's possible the participants hadn't yet been stressed for a long enough time or to a great enough degree for it to show up in their biomarkers. Those physiological problems could then ultimately contribute to the development of a mental disorder, says the scientist. Number 2, don't just accept being stressed out as a fact of life. Based on the researchers' conclusion, a good number of people are very stressed out because they struggle to regulate their emotions, and that's something you can get better at. As we conclude this video, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to view, listen, or watch this video. As always, please like and subscribe and share with anybody who can benefit from this. Until then, see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.